It was nice of Superman to make a couple of appearances in his Richard Pryor comedy special. I'm John Renton with the Retro View of Superman 3 from 1983. There was another movie that came out in 1983. This came out in 1983. Also quite the year for movies that ended in 3 because you had Jaws 3D. Yes, I will retro review the other Jaws sequels sometime after this, but meanwhile, I decided to descend further and further into madness with Superman 3. That somehow was not the low point of the Superman canon with Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent / Superman. But, oh, director Richard Lester, I will see you in hell for what you did to this once beloved franchise. You stupid son of a bitch. My God, if you thought Superman 2 was a bit of a misfire, even though there were some points that actually worked, Richard Pryor was in an entirely different movie. He wanted to apparently do a Superman movie. He mentioned that on the Johnny Carson show. You know, Johnny Carson, back when late night hosts actually were good, unlike Jimmy fucking Fallon, who seems nice and has all the comedic timing of somebody that was recently woken up from a 10-year coma. So, Richard Lester, by the way, in addition to doing Superman 2, did Help. The movie could have used some help. Also, Hard Day's Night. It was written by David and Leslie Newman and Mario Puzo, even though he got an uncredited, bit here. Margot Kidder's role got cut to pretty much the very beginning and the very end because she spoke out against Richard Donner being fired from the filming and production of Superman 2. So that's good. That shows that maybe we want to stand up for people that actually are speaking up for good directors. And Richard Lester may not have actually been a bad director. Help and Hard Day's Night. I actually used to own both of them on Blu-ray before I had to clean house a number of years ago. Those were movies that you could actually appreciate. That he just wasn't the right fit for a superhero movie. You did have Robert Vaughn. What was Robert Vaughn doing? What did Robert Vaughn have hanging over his head? Was the government threatening to take his home if he wasn't in a really bad movie like this? He was in Bullet and the Magnificent Seven. And a bunch of other stuff. Annette O'Toole in this, my. That's how Annette O'Toole used to look, huh? She also was in Smallville. And looked good in that, too. Annie Ross, who plays Vera, not the, I believe, Scottish or Welsh woman detective in that series called Vera. Yeah, I know, obscure shit. Pamela Stevenson, well, boy, people, I'm sure, like two things about her. Actually, I'm sure she was very nice. She was just supposed to play a ditz. And, yeah, you got Richard Pryor as Gus Gorman, who's a computer program. Well, he gets into computer programming. He learns how to shave off some stuff. Half a cent here, half a cent there. And somehow is easily able to accumulate like $85,000. And then Robert Vaughn's Ross Webster basically says, hey, do my bidding and I won't put you in jail. And then that bidding just gets increasingly more out of control with stuff like hacking into the weather satellites. And building this unholy supercomputer to do the bidding of whatever. Oh yeah, Superman's in this also. Not that you would know for at least about half this movie because he doesn't make a lot of appearances. This also is the infamous one where, trying to create a synthetic kryptonite, they basically create an alter ego of Superman that really just kind of wants to be left alone and just drink and act like a human and have a 5 o'clock shadow and stuff like that. And also want to bang Annette O'Toole, which, granted, again, back in 1983, I'm sure she would have had a lot of suitors. Probably still would, but nevertheless. Yeah, this movie's a mess. A complete mess. An absolute terror. Just terrible, terrible entry into the franchise. Not the worst, though. That would be The Quest for Queef. It might as well have been called that. I will retro-review that as well. I will retro-review at least Superman Returns and Man of Steel. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to Batman vs. Superman, because why? I mean, why would I want to do that? I don't know, maybe whatever, it's fine. So, yeah, that's basically it. Let's talk about some facts and figures, why don't we? Oh, wait, let's talk about the original script. That was by somebody named Salkin, Ilya Salkin, not Ilya Dragunov. One had Brainiac and Mr. Miss Polixix, however the hell you say that, Polik. You know, the one with the hard name to spell and everything, that looked like Mr. Magoo with a weird hat. A weirder hat. And Superman was going to meet Supergirl. They actually ended up doing a Supergirl movie in 1984, so the year after this, that I completely fucking forgot about. that I would watch, but I don't know if it's available on any streaming service. I don't know if I have time. $39 million budget, which would be $125.8 million in today's money. So basically 3 times. That's down from the $55 million for the first and the $54 million for the second. Now, you could definitely tell that they cut the budget quite a bit with some of the special effects, but also the fact that some of these shots were just absolutely shit. $13.3 million opening, which would be $43 million basically in today's money. That's up from the 7.4 that the first had, but down from the 14.1, 14.2 that the second one had. So, okay, not great. Don't worry. It'll have legs and stick around for $60 million in the U.S., which is down from the 108 and the 134. 108 for the second, 134 for the first. That would be $193.6 million in today's money and $80.2 million worldwide gross. $258.8 million in today's money. So, okay, it turned a profit, a sizable one, even with the marketing costs. But that's down from the $216 for Superman 2 and the $300 million for Superman 1. So it's no wonder the budget got slashed for Superman: A Quest for Queef. So, Pryor basically is trying to find work. This leads to a bunch of sight gags that don't fucking work. We have some penguin toys that walk around that are on fire. A blind man operates one of those paint dealies, those road painting dealies. Steps on a guy's head that falls in a little pit there. And, yeah, a lady gets her groceries knocked out of her hand and other stuff. And I would really like to know who thought that was a good idea. Because if it was Richard Lester, then he deserves to be, quite frankly, I don't know, beaten with a goddamn stick as far as I'm concerned. So, basically, this leads to also a guy running into a fire hydrant, somehow getting his car flooded because physics, and Superman manages to save him. Oh, yeah, there's a bank robbery that occurs during this as well. Pryor does computer programming, does all the stuff that I mentioned before. Lois goes to Bermuda, not Jamaica. Boy, I want to take you away from this film into the Bahamas. Oh, come on, kid or mama. Convenient, they were writing her out of this whole damn thing. And then there's also this thing about this, like, little ball tumbler thing where readers can get an all-expenses-paid trip to South America. Just so happens to be Colombia, which just so happens to be a country that's targeted by something a little bit later on. So, Clark goes back to Smallville for a high school reunion. Gus does figure out shaving this anyway. That's called salami shaving or something like that. I forget. Salami something. It was on IMDb. And then there's a chemical plant explosion in Smallville, and Jimmy is there to try and do some camera work. But, well, Superman ends up having to save the thing. Oh, and there's this acid that if it heats up over a certain temperature, you're going to see some serious shit. And it can melt through anything. It can melt through metal. It can melt through whatever plastic, whatever stuff. That won't come back to into the finished product. Don't worry. Yeah, and he manages to basically, because they run out of water and the lake's 5 miles away, he freezes the top layer of the lake and brings it and just causes a shower that stops the friggin' fire. Billy Joel was right. They didn't start the fire, but it was always turning until the lake stopped the burning. So, that's it there. He goes to his high school reunion. There's Brad, the washed-up jock guy that is always hitting on Ned O'Toole. Dick. And it's Lana Lang. So, Webster is impressed by Gus's work. I'm impressed that you managed to take money away from me and everything. Of course, they made the black man the criminal in this. Because why wouldn't Richard Lester? I assume, in just some wild accusation for no reason. This is... And then we have the couple that goes to the goddamn Columbia, on the Columbia trip. And then meanwhile, there's a lot of notes that I took here, so you will just forgive me, because I had to keep track of some of this stuff, because it was not impossible to follow, it was just impossible to care. Robert Vaughn really tries here. Miss Ross plays his sister, and then Pamela plays the ditzy blonde with the nice tits. I mean, I'm sorry, they were right out there, that's just how it was. So, Brad is a drunk, Ricky is Lana's kid, and he's trying to help him, or Brad's stupidly trying to help him be a jock. And then Clark gets, I'm sorry, I'm losing a little bit of track of all this stuff, but Clark gets a bunch of that powder from a bowling alley in his nose and sneezes because Superman can sneeze. Sneezer Man, as it were. Should have workshopped that, and knocks the bowling ball straight into a strike and basically destroys the wall. So good job. Your name is the only bowling alley there in Smallville, you fucking dick. Pryor is in a different movie, is what I noted. The fool that can control the computer can control the world himself, is what Robert Vaughn says. Again, Robert Vaughn, really trying here. Jackie Cooper, I don't know why Jackie Cooper's just complete disdain for humanity and just any interactions with people in general amuses me so much, but I can identify with that. Jackie Cooper, by the way, is Perry White, the head of the whole Daily Planet. And so basically, Gus is told, I won't put you in jail, Ross says, if you do what I want you to do. I want you to basically stop the country of Colombia from growing coffee because they're the only country that won't work with me. So they're going to hack the Vulcan satellite, or Gus is. And then that causes a bunch of ridiculous, shit to happen to Colombia while that couple that won that raffle, that trip, just happens to be there. Oh boy, awkward romance with Lana and Clark. And then Ricky looks for his dog and gets knocked out because Ricky is a fucking idiot with a stupid haircut, not wished into the cornfield. Pryor ends up having a suitcase bar for Brad that entices him to get into this area to hack this computer satellite thing that just happens to be in Smallville. Ricky, by the way, did get saved. The dog also got saved by Superman. And now Ricky kind of wants Superman to be his birthday party. There's KFC posters. There's a pack of camels they might as well shoved in the goddamn camera. I understand sponsorships and Jesus Christ, though. This isn't as egregious as the second movie with the Marlboro truck and the Marlboro banners and the KFC restaurant just so happened to be there where people were talking about the great fries. I remember when KFC used to be good. Speaking of good, well, this movie isn't good. So basically, in his attempts to find a way to hack the satellite, he hacks people's bank accounts and makes it look like they have obscene credit card statements or people can get money out of ATMs. And Gus then basically does shit in Colombia. Superman stops it, which we see in flashbacks, by the way. And they recreate some kryptonite to destroy him. But this kryptonite, after Richard Pryor basically shows up dressed as a military guy and hands him the kryptonite, is synthetic, so it just kind of makes him act like a dick where he doesn't really want to do anything, which I can identify. I'm sick of being asked to help people, but I'll always help people because that's just me. I'm not Superman, but that being said, he just acts like a dick during the in the Smallville Superman celebration thing. He takes longer to do stuff like not rescue somebody or something falling from a bridge. He fixes the Leaning Tower of Pisa, makes it stand up. So this vendor's all upset and now he's going to make towers to stand up. Which at the end, Superman fixes what he did and there you go. He blows the Olympic torch out. He then is just doing what he's doing. He bangs Pamela Stephenson, which seems like everybody else already had. I mean, just based on her character, it just seemed like that was what they were implying that she was easy, breezy, beautiful. They just took out, well, okay, she was that, but definitely the first one is what they were implying. So, Ross Webster's idea is, hey, I want everybody to rely on what I want for a source of income. Stop all these oil tankers and all this oil drilling. And Gus, make sure that people have to rely on me. So that's what caused the oil bust in Oklahoma and Texas that caused a downturn in the wrestling business a few years after this, because 1983 was still when David Von Erich was able to gut things out. So, the Blondie, and I'm sorry, but and I know Pamela was putting a voice on. God, I hope she was. Voice is super annoying. I think it was supposed to be annoying. So, then Superman breaks apart a British refinery tanker where the oil spills out, the Exxon Valdez. And then Ricky basically is telling Superman after seeing him coming out of a bar with a 5 o'clock shadow, and all this, Superman, you're good, you're just in a slump. And then he battles Clark Kent in a junkyard, where it's 5 o'clock Shadow Superman, Clark Kent Superman. They do goofy stuff. He can't keep Clark down, and it's pretty obvious, by the way, that even though this is a clone Superman or a bad Superman, that he's not he's not quite Superman. He's close. He's close enough for rock and roll. He doesn't get that he can't really kill Clark, though. And Clark basically gets him down and is choking him, and then suddenly he's gone. So Superman is back. That whole plot point of, like, bad Superman for, like, 20 minutes. And basically during this, Gus had asked Ross basically, hey, you can't jail me because I'm more valuable here than in jail. I want you to build me a giant supercomputer that will do anything that I want. What if I want you to do something? Tell me what you want me to tell it. Mind you, Gus, even though it seems like he's just kind of in over his head, actually he really is. He asked for this. They get these supplies. They go to the Grand Canyon, or at least a canyon. And the sister knows computer programming and decides, hey, let's use all these devices and all this weaponry that we just happen to fucking have. If you thought Puma Man was really dog shit, and it was, this, like, just throws a whole bunch of stuff just in at the last little bit. We see some Atari, like, 5200 or 7800 style graphics here. Actually, I think the 5200 was the only one out in 83. I think the 7800 came out later, if I recall correctly. Older, those that are way more in tune with the video game scene and the history, let me know. But there are these rockets and stuff like that. It was like fucking Afterburner. The plane game, by the way. The first person one that made you really dizzy because it would spin you up and do all this and everything. So they're firing rockets at Superman while this giant missile is going to destroy him and throw him into these rocks. Which it does, but then that doesn't end up stopping him. So then they have all these weapons, like in this giant computer apparatus they just about managed to build really quickly. What is Robert Vaughn's line of work? Because he had a giant bar that swung in and out and around and picked a bale of whatever. And he had all this other stuff, but now all of a sudden they're just in this cave with this giant supercomputer. So they put Superman in a clear ball sack, is the best way I can describe it. But then a kryptonite beam, you know. And Gus realizes, I don't really want to kill Superman. Let me go take this lone pin out. This pin that just looks like a little dart. That they end up, that basically Ross gets upset at him and tries to get it back from him, but Gus swallows it. And then the computer suddenly takes over because the computer wants to live, because the computer became that sentient that quickly. It takes all the power from Metropolis and seemingly the entire country and is trying to power itself. It takes goddamn Vera into its little web and turns her into a robot-like thing. Straight out of fucking Robot Holocaust. Valeria, remember that? The beautiful redhead that couldn't act for shit. Dajuan. But then, while that's happening, Blondie gets pinned up against the wall, which I'm sure she's used to. And Gus gets thrown around. Ross gets fried. And Superman has run away and comes back with a canister. The canister of acid. He takes the lid off just as it starts to suck Superman in. And oh no, Superman gets turned into a weird robot thing. He's unstoppable, like Kobe Bryant at Denver Hotel. But the canister basically activates because it's the acid getting too hot. And it melts through the floor and melts all this stuff and everything and sprays all over like fucking the goo in Ghostbusters 2 with Vigo. And then he saves Gus while the computer burns. And that's it. That's all over. He gets Lana a diamond from a piece of coal to replace the engagement ring she had to pawn off. And Brad stupidly does stuff where he gets knocked out and sent into a goddamn elevator and gets the shaft fitting for whoever that actor is. Actually, I'm sure he's a nice guy. He just played a dick really well. Lois is back from the Caribbean after breaking a big story, and Lana is the new secretary for Barry White at the Daily Planet. And he fixes a tower, and that's it. That's fucking Superman 3. I mean, did I describe that well at all? Because that movie is a mess. I mean, it is really, really bad. And Quest for Queef is not all that much better. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritland. Until we meet again, happy trails to you.